the Soyuz 1 with Komarov inside. Then the next day, a second vehicle would take off with 2 more cosmonauts. The 2 vehicles would meet. Komarov would crawl from one vehicle to the other, exchanging places with a colleague, and then come home in the second ship. The problem was that Yuri Gagarin and some senior technicians had inspected the Soyuz 1 capsule. They had found 203 serious structural problems that would make it dangerous to navigate in space. Yuri suggested the mission should not go ahead. Yuri even wrote a 10-page memo and gave it to his friend in the KGB, Veniamin Rusiev, but nobody dared to give it to the leader, Leonid Brezhnev. Everyone who saw that memo, including Veniamin Rusiev, was demoted, fired, or sent to Siberia. Komarov realized he would have to make the trip. He met with Rusiev, the now demoted KGB agent, and told him, "I'm not going to make it back from this flight." Rusiev asked him, "Why not refuse?" Komarov replied, "If I don't make this flight, they'll send the backup pilot instead." The backup pilot was Yuri, and Komarov could not do that to his friend. He said, "That's Yura, and he'll die instead of me. We've got to take care of him." Komarov then burst into tears. On launch day, a Russian journalist reported that Yuri showed up and demanded to be put into a spacesuit, but no one was expecting him to fly. Some observers thought he was trying to get onto the flight to save Komarov, but the Soyuz capsule left Earth with Komarov on board. Many failures began in the spacecraft, as they had expected. As a result, the second intended launch was cancelled. On his descent back to Earth, Komarov's cries could be heard. He cursed the people who had made him fly the botched spaceship. He was killed when his parachute failed to open. Komarov was the first human to die in a space flight. Next is gay astronauts. 330 American men and women have served as astronauts since the start of NASA's human spaceflight program. However, none of them were openly gay. Only one is now known to have been gay or bisexual. Sally Ride, who was the first American woman in space. She kept it private until her death, where her obituary stated Astronomers are the brightest and most distant celestial objects in the universe discovered so far. They are so bright, they drown out the light from all other stars in the same galaxy. They emit energies of millions, billions, or even trillions of electron volts. Quasars are believed to produce their energy from supermassive black holes in the center of the galaxies in which the quasars are located. In 2017, the most distant quasar was found located over 13 billion light-years from Earth. It seems to have appeared only 690 million years after the Big Bang. Quasars this young could reveal information about how galaxies evolve over time. Next is the Carrington event. The Carrington event was the most intense solar storm recorded in history, occurring in 1859. In August of 1859, astronomers around the world watched with fascination as the number of sunspots on the solar disk grew. Among them was Richard Carrington, an amateur skywatcher from England. On September 1st, as Carrington was sketching the sunspots, he was blinded by a sudden flash of light. He described it as a white light flare. This was the first solar flare recorded in history. The whole event lasted about 5 minutes. It was a major coronal mass ejection, which is a burst of magnetic as far north as Santiago, Chile. Today, a solar storm of this magnitude would cause widespread electronic disruptions, blackouts, and an internet apocalypse. Although it had no noticeable impact on the health of humans or other life on Earth. Next is Tabby's star. Tabby's star is a star that has unusual fluctuations in brightness. It is named after Professor Tabitha Boyajian, who said, "The new data shows that different colors of light are being blocked at different intensities. Therefore, whatever is passing between us and the star is not opaque, as would be expected from a planet or alien megastructure." Next is Saturn's rings will disappear. NASA research confirmed that Saturn is losing its iconic rings, and at this rate they will disappear in 100 million years. This is relatively short compared to Saturn's age of over 4 billion years. The rings are made up of large chunks of ice, which are falling on the planet as ice rain because of the planet's intense gravity. This is possible due to the impact of micrometeorites, solar wind particles, solar UV radiation, or electromagnetic forces picking up electrically charged dust, all of which would be pulled towards the planet due to the gravitational field. Next is solar eclipses are coincidences. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the sun and Earth, casting the moon's shadow on Earth. Total solar eclipses are when the moon nearly perfectly covers the sun. These are coincidences. If the sun was just a bit bigger, or the moon a bit further away, total solar eclipses would never happen. The diameter of the moon is almost exactly 400 times smaller than the diameter of the sun, and the sun is almost exactly 400 times further away than the moon. The result of this is that the size we see from Earth of the sun and of the moon are almost exactly the same, making eclipses possible. Next is gravity is not a force. In physics, a force is an influence that causes the motion of an object with mass to change its velocity, for example, to accelerate. Einstein argued that gravity is not a force. He described it as a curvature of time and space caused by mass and energy. In general relativity, gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time in the presence of mass. Without a force acting upon it, an object will move in a straight line. A number of experiments show that gravity is indeed an effect of space and time. Gravity is built into the very shape of the universe. Next is Martian canals. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it was believed that there were canals on the planet Mars. These were a network of long, straight lines in the equatorial regions on Mars. They were observed by astronomers using early telescopes without photography. In 1877, Milan Observatory director Giovanni Schiaparelli began mapping and naming areas on Mars. He named the Martian seas and continents with names from historic and mythological sources. He saw channels on Mars and called them canali, which means channels, but it was mistranslated into canals, leading people to believe there was intelligent life on Mars. Later photographs taken by NASA's Marina 4 show that there were no canals at all. There was not even something that could be misinterpreted as canals. On close observation, it had been an optical illusion all along. Next is Buran. Buran was the first space plane to be produced by the Soviet Union, with similar design and function to the US Space Shuttle. Buran completed one uncrewed spaceflight in 1988. It was projected to have a second flight by 1993. However, the dissolution of the Soviet Union led to funding drying up, and this flight never took place. Buran was destroyed after the storage room it was in collapsed in 2002, killing 8 workers. Next is Soyuz 11. Soyuz 11 was the first successful successful visit to the first space station, the Salyut 1. However, the mission ended in disaster when the crew capsule depressurized during preparations for its return to Earth, killing the 3-man crew by asphyxiation. They are the only people who have died in outer space. The Soyuz 11 returned to Earth with a perfect landing, which was completely automated, carrying the bodies of the crew. Next is space-time might be 4D. According to Einstein, you need to describe where you are, not only in 3-dimensional space, but also in time. Time is the 4th dimension. Space-time is a mathematical model that combines the 3 dimensions of space, length, width, and height, and 1 dimension of time, into a 4-dimensional manifold called a continuum. However, some believe space-time is not real, but is instead an illusion. Next is human ashes in the outer solar system. The concept of launching human remains into space using rockets is known as space burials. Missions may go into orbit around the Earth or to extraterrestrial bodies such as the Moon or even further into space. Often, only small samples of remains are launched to reduce the cost. Since 1997, the private company Celestis has conducted space burials. They offer various services such as Earthrise, which takes remains to outer space and then back to Earth. Another option, called Earth Orbit, takes ashes to space, then vaporizes them as it re-enters the atmosphere like a shooting star. The most expensive service, called the Voyager, sends the remains on a permanent journey into deep space. The first space burial occurred in 1992 when the NASA Space Shuttle Columbia carried a sample of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's ashes into space and then returned them to Earth. We are now on tier number 7. Pioneer Anomaly. In 1972, Pioneer 10 was the first spacecraft to pass through the asteroid belt, obtain close-up images of Jupiter, and then pass Pluto. Pioneer 10 is carrying a gold plaque that describes what human million years to reach. Its sister ship, Pioneer 11, was sent on a similar route, but ended its mission in 1995 when it stopped transmitting signals. The Pioneer anomaly was the unpredicted change in speed of Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 while on their way out of the solar system. As they traveled away from the sun, they slowed down. Most of this slowing was expected as a result of the gravitational pull of the sun and other objects. However, both spacecrafts were found to be slowing more than expected. After 20 years of being unsolved, it concluded that radiation forces coming from the heating of the spacecraft and electronics were enough to explain the Pioneer anomaly. Next is Martian waterfall. Mars has no liquid water today, but there is evidence of past lakes and waterfalls on Mars billions of years ago. In Eclipses valves, there are dried riverbeds of about 2,400 kilometers long and giant dried up waterfalls 10 times higher and 100 times wider than Niagara Falls. There is also evidence for lava waterfalls where molten lava acted in a similar way to liquid water. Next is space blindness. Many astronauts have reported deteriorated eyesight, known as space-associated neuro-ocular syndrome. This syndrome affects 80% of astronauts on long-duration missions in space. Researchers believe that the visual problems are a result of increased pressure in the skull due to little or no gravity. Studies were done on 27 astronauts who had spent 108 days or more in space. Results showed that a third of them had an expansion of cerebrospinal fluid surrounding the optic nerves. 15% had a bulging optic nerve, and 22% had a flattening of the back of their eyeballs, causing untreatable nearsightedness. Astronauts may experience space blindness after as little as a couple of months in space. To travel to Mars, the current time needed is around 20 months. Elon Musk said that the first Mars colonists must be prepared for anything, including the loss of vision. mission for the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1983. During its mission, one of the windows was damaged non-critically by a tiny piece of paint. This would be the cause of the loss of Space Shuttle Columbia and its crew almost 2 decades later. Next is Venus on the Moon. The Moon Museum is a small ceramic tile containing art by 6 artists from the 1960s. The artists are Andy Warhol in the top left, Robert Rauschenberg, David Novros, Forrest Myers, Glaze Oldenburg, and John Chamberlain. This tile was supposedly secretly attached to a leg of the lunar module Intrepid and left on the moon in 1969 during Apollo 12. The Moon Museum is considered the first space art object, although it has not been officially confirmed. Next is Oumuamua Spaceship Conspiracy. Oumuamua is the first known interstellar object to enter our solar system, discovered in 2017. It was originally thought to be a comet, but was an unusually elongated shape. Also, no known asteroid or comet from our solar system has varied so much in brightness like the Oumuamua. A conspiracy theory is that it might be an alien spaceship. Scientists mentioned that the object was observed to be accelerating. A Harvard astrophysicist proposed a theory that it was propelled by an alien machine, such as a light sail. The object can no longer be seen with any telescope since it passed Neptune in 2022 and is currently on its way out of our solar system. Next is dark energy. Strangely, the expansion of the universe had initially been de-accelerating until 7 or 8 billion years after the Big Bang. Then, for unknown reasons, a mysterious anti-gravity force started to dominate, which then reversed this slowing and started to accelerate. Dark energy is the name given to the unknown force that's causing the accelerating expansion of the universe. Because of this effect it has on the universe, we know it exists, but other than that, dark energy is a mystery. Approximately 68% of the universe is dark energy, while dark matter makes up about 27%. The last 5% is normal matter. Next is the Great Attractor. Our galaxy and other nearby galaxies are being pulled towards a specific region in space. It's about 150 million light years away, on the other side of the Milky Way. We can't see it because it is obscured by the Milky Way's galactic plane, known as the zone of avoidance. We're not exactly sure what it is, but it is called the Great Attractor. It was first discovered in the 1970s that the Milky Way moves through space. Astrophysicists found that the Milky Way was moving in the direction of the constellation Centaurus at about 600 kilometers per second. It was found that about 400 elliptical galaxies are moving towards the Great Attractor beyond the zone of avoidance. Next is string theory. String theory is an idea in theoretical physics that says reality is made up of infinitesimal vibrating strings, smaller than atoms or electrons. According to this theory, as the strings vibrate, twist and fold, they produce effects in many tiny dimensions which humans interpret into everything from particle physics to large-scale phenomena like gravity. Current versions of the theory have a total of 10 or 11 dimensions. No experiment has definitively proven string theory to be the fundamental theory of nature. However, the ideas of string theory have passed many theoretical and mathematical tests over the last 50 years. Next is Venusian dinosaurs. In the 17th century, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei looked through his telescope and found the planet Venus to have almost no features. What he saw was Venus's layer of thick clouds blocking the view to the planet. One of his most outlandish comments was something like the following: "I can't see a thing on the surface of Venus. Why not? Because it's covered with a dense layer of clouds." Well, what are the clouds made of? Water, of course. Therefore, Venus must have an awful lot of water on it. Therefore, the surface must be wet. Well, if the surface is wet, it's probably a there's a swamp, there's ferns. If there's ferns, maybe there's even dinosaurs. However, we now know that there is no rain on Venus, since the planet's temperature reaches over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. There is no liquid, therefore there are no ferns and no dinosaurs. Next is strange quarks. Quarks are subatomic particles that are so small they are believed to be the fundamental particles and cannot be broken down or divided any further. There are several varieties of quarks. Strange quarks have a resistance to decay against strong force and electromagnetism. This means that any particle that contains a strange quark cannot decay due to strong force, but instead with a much slower, weak force. It was believed that this was a strange method of decay, which is where the name comes from. Next is many worlds. The many worlds theory is an interpretation of quantum mechanics that says there may be multiple copies of us living in multiple worlds. Our universe is just one of many parallel worlds that branch off from each other, nanosecond by nanosecond, without intersecting or communicating with one another. Some cosmologists believe the many worlds interpretation is the best way to explain the existence of the universe. Next is Zuma disappearance. Zuma was a classified US government satellite that was launched by SpaceX in 2018. Since it is classified, it's not clear what happened. SpaceX reported that the mission was successful, but reports by Bloomberg and other news outlets say that the satellite fell back to Earth after malfunctioning in orbit, then crash-landed in the ocean. It is also possible the spacecraft may have been lost once it reached outer space, since there was reportedly an object seen in orbit that may have been the Zuma satellite. We are now on tier number 8 of the iceberg. Starquakes. Starquakes occur on neutron stars, which are supernova remnants. Neutron stars are composed entirely of neutrons and have a solid crust. Starquakes can change the rotation and tilt of a neutron star. a star. Matter from the inside of the star then trickles out of the cracks, forming very tiny mountains, which are thinner than the head of a pin, but incredibly dense. Since the rotational axis and the magnetic axis of a star are often different, these mountains cause an imbalance on the star's surface. This then causes the star to undergo a sudden adjustment where the quakes emit massive amounts of energy, mostly in the form of X-rays. One type of starquake registers at 20.1 on the Richter scale, which is more than 1,000 times more energy than an earthquake with a magnitude of 7. Next, Lorentz factor. Einstein's theory of special relativity says that an object at rest versus the same object in motion have different physical properties, such as length, mass, and time. The Lorentz factor is a number that represents this change in the physical properties of the object in motion based on its speed. The Lorentz factor is used when calculating time dilation. Time dilation is the slowing of time as perceived by one observer compared with another, depending on their relative motion or positions. For example, if you fly from Boston to Los Angeles, you will age faster than people on the ground. However, after you fly from Los Angeles to Boston and return home, you will age more slowly due to the extra speed you gain by moving with the Earth's spin. Next, the final parsec problem. A parsec is a measurement of distance equal to 3.2 light years or 19 trillion miles. A binary black hole is where two black holes are in close orbit around each other. Scientists do not know if two supermassive black holes would merge together. The final parsec problem suggests that all binary black holes will stall at around 1 parsec apart, and time will stretch out into infinity. Next is Soyuz GMA Superstition. Soyuz GMA-11 was a human spaceflight mission to transport personnel to and from the International Space Station. The mission began astronauts on board had a minor injury and bruising. This was the second time in a row this had happened for Soyuz DMA. The head of the Russian Federal Space Agency, Anatoly Perminov, speculated the malfunction was due to a Russian superstition which says that having more women than men on board was unlucky. The return flight of Soyuz DMA-11 was the first time 2 women flew together on board a Soyuz. Perminov said, "This is not discrimination. I'm just saying that when a majority of the crew is female, sometimes certain kinds of unsanctioned behavior or something else occurs." Perminov said he would try to ensure that the number of women would not exceed the number of men in the future. Next is moons with rings. Rings are one of the primary components of the Saturn system. The rings are about 30 feet thick and almost completely made of billions of chunks of ice, ranging in size from smaller than a grain of sand up to the size of a mountain. Rhea is the second largest moon of Saturn and may have a ring system consisting of 3 narrow, dense bands. This would be the first discovery of rings around a moon. One possible explanation for these rings is that they are remnants from an asteroid or comet collision in Rhea's past. Such a collision may have pushed large amounts of gas and solid particles around Rhea. Once the gas dissipated, all that was left were the ring particles. Other moons of Saturn show evidence of catastrophic collisions. Next is the end of greatness. Looking at the universe on its largest size scales, it appears to be a uniform and homogeneous distribution of random galaxy superclusters. A supercluster is a large group of smaller galaxy clusters. They are among the largest known structures in the universe. This large-scale uniformity suddenly disappears when looking at the universe on a smaller size scale. Astronomers refer to the appearance of cosmic uniformity as the end of greatness. Next is the merging of fundamental forces physicists unified electricity and magnetism into the electromagnetic force. Later, physicists linked another force, the weak force, with that electromagnetic force to form a theory of electro-weak interactions. Some physicists believe the next logical step is merging all four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the weak force, and the strong force, all into one. This would create a theory of everything. However, these four fundamental forces are very different, and this theory has not yet been achieved. Next is CMB, is quantum fluctuations. As previously mentioned, the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, is the leftover radiation from the Big Bang. A quantum fluctuation is the temporary change in the amount of energy in a point of space. For example, if you put a marble at the bottom of a bowl, it will stay there indefinitely. But if you put a very lightweight particle in a tiny bowl, you will find it doesn't sit at the bottom, but instead moves around. This is due to quantum fluctuations. It is believed that quantum fluctuations led to CMB fluctuations. Next is you might be a Boltzmann brain. Boltzmann brain is a thought experiment which says that it might be more likely for a single brain to spontaneously form in a void, completed with a false memory of having existed in our universe. And this is more likely than it is for the whole entire universe to have formed via the Big Bang. If you are a Boltzmann brain, then nothing in the universe may be real. Next is dark flow. Dark flow represents the movement of hundreds of galaxy clusters in the direction of an area between the constellations Centaurus and Vela, and possibly towards the Great Attractor. Observed galaxies were found to be moving in this direction at a speed of 1.3 million to 2.2 million miles per hour. Next is photons experience no time. A photon is a tiny particle comprised of waves of electromagnetic radiation. Photons are just electric fields traveling through space, your surroundings, then your surroundings would appear to have no time pass at all relative to you. There could be no additional motion allowing a photon to move relative to your surroundings. A clock would be impossible, so photons do not experience time. We're now on tier number 9. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality refers to the experience of surviving quantum suicide. Quantum suicide is a thought experiment which says it is impossible to commit suicide because at each attempt the universe will split into multiple realities, wherein at least one of which the person will still be alive. This leads them to have quantum immortality. Next is holographic universe. A holographic universe is an idea where all the information that makes up our 3D reality is actually stored on a 2D surface, including time. This means everything you see and experience is an illusion. Theoretical physicists investigating irregularities in the cosmic microwave background have found there is substantial evidence supporting a holographic explanation of the universe. Next, only one electron exists. The one electron universe is a hypothesis that says every electron in the universe is actually one particle that continually travels backwards and forwards through time. Next is everything is a spime. The word spime was coined by Bruce Sterling in 2004 as a blend of space and time. A spime is a theoretical object that can be tracked through space and time throughout the lifetime of the object. An object can be considered a spime when all of its essential information is stored in the cloud. He believes that eventually all things will become spimes. Next is astronaut Edgar Mitchell believes in UFOs. Edgar Mitchell is best known for saving the Apollo 14 mission as it descended to the moon in 1971. But he also claimed that top military officials had hidden evidence of UFOs, potentially alien spacecraft, and that they were particularly fond of hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. Mitchell said, White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear they had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth. He said that other military personnel had confided in him that alien spacecraft were responsible for disabling nuclear missiles and for shooting them down over the Pacific coast. Mitchell was one of the US military's best pilots and was not known for making wild statements. Next is false vacuum. A vacuum is a space without matter or energy. In practice, only partial vacuums are possible. A false vacuum is a hypothetical vacuum that is somewhat, but not completely stable. This condition is known as metastable. It may last for a very long time in that state and might eventually move to a more stable state, an event known as false vacuum decay. It is thought that if the universe was to die, this would be the most efficient way. Next is the solar system is a zoo. The zoo hypothesis is an idea that there are alien civilizations out there that know all about us, but purposefully hide from us. Astrobiologist Douglas Lakosh said, "Perhaps extraterrestrials are watching humans on Earth, much like we watch animals in a zoo. How can we get the galactic zookeepers to reveal themselves?" He proposed that humans should be more active in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He says, if we went to a zoo and suddenly a zebra turned towards us, looked us in the eye, and started reciting a series of prime numbers, that would establish a radically different relationship between us and the zebra, and we would feel compelled to respond. Next is higher dimensions are folded up at the Planck length. The Planck length is an extremely small length used to define the scale at which the theory of gravity fails. This length is the best estimate we have so far for the smallest possible length. Higher dimensions are a concept that refers to the existence of spatial dimensions beyond the three we experience: length, width, and height. It is proposed that extraterrestrials the idea that universes might make up the particles and matter of an even larger universe or universes. The axis of evil is a name given to the apparent correlation between the plane of the solar system and aspects of the cosmic microwave background. It gives the plane of the solar system and the location of Earth a greater significance than just chance. This violates the Copernican principle, which states that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and that we do not occupy a special place. Next is reality is just information. This is a theory by scientist and philosopher Bernardo Kastrup. He says that since all particles can be described by a number of variables, such as momentum, charge, spin, and mass, that reality itself may just be a set of information. All matter is an illusion, and the only real thing is information. Kastrup said, only the mathematical apparatus that is used in theories is real, not the perceived world the apparatus was created to describe in the first place. The basic idea is that the physical universe exists because we perceive it. It's like a mass hallucination we use to make sense of the mathematical relationships of objects. Next is living stellar objects. Living stellar objects is a theory which says the main factor for producing life is abundant energy, which stars have plenty of. Author Robert Forward described a type of life that could live on a neutron star. Astrophysicist Frank Drake theorized that such life would be microscopic, made of atom nuclei rather than full atoms, and be flattened due to extreme gravity. They would be essentially amoeba that live and die millisecond to millisecond. In some colder ordinary stars, it may be possible for life to evolve in the form of hard tungsten spheres, measuring a few micrometers across. Some brown dwarf stars are so cold that they are actually room temperature on the surface, which would allow for much more complex organisms that float around in the atmosphere and soak up radiation for food. Next is another universe seen in the CMB. holes are consistent with the general theory of relativity, but whether they exist has not been proven. This theory about backwards time travel assumes the notion that black holes can act as wormholes. The theory can be explained through this example. Say you create a wormhole with two ends, A and B. You leave A alone and decide to take B for a high-speed journey through the universe for a year, close to the speed of light. B would have experienced less time than A due to general relativity. So by the time you bring the two ends together again, one might be hundreds of years older than the other, but they are still connected. If you pass through B and exit at A, you would find yourself emerging hundreds of years in the past. If you believe that black holes have associated white holes, where matter goes in one side and comes out the other, then you can assume that things could travel backwards in time through these space-time tunnels. Next is all energy can be represented as a single wave. This theory is similar to the one-electron universe theory. This is a hypothetical way of interpreting reality as a single wave that bounces backwards and forwards in time, taking on different properties to produce what we experience as particles, interacting with past and future versions of itself to create atoms. That is the completed space iceberg. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.